Don, as you were talking about, you can insure against anything if depending on the price that you want to pay. Like you could pay an astronomical price to make sure that you're like completely, reduce risk to 0.0001%. But like how do you think that having this event actually happen is going to impact how retail electricity providers are planning, how it's going to affect the competition in the ERCOT market?
It's unfortunate. The retailers they're basically farmers, right? The weather took absolute control of their business through no fault of their own. Dozens of small retailers, medium-sized retailers, got blown away. So you have, as a rep, you have a load forecast, you have a probability curve. You may hedge 105%, 110%, because it might get hot, it might get cold. But people saw their load shift up by 80%. And I don't know how you insure against that. So from a rep standpoint, from a commodity hedging and price risk hedging, I don't know how you ever protect against an event like this. The good news is that the probability of any of us sitting here seeing another event like this is fairly remote. It's kind of like having another 56-inch rain event like we had in Harvey hanging over it. So, how do you hedge against that? I don't know. I think what we will see, though, is, and to Becky's point, the communication that it is going to involve everybody. We call it a smart grid, but it's just not that bright. So in order for the smart grid to raise its IQ, we're going to have to involve the people who actually use the electricity in responding to generation that can't respond to their load shifts. When you have solar, if it's sunny, it's on. If you have wind, if it's blowing, it's on. But you can't ramp it up and you can't ramp it down like you can a thermal source. You don't have automatic generation control that has traditionally worked in the construct that we have. And so one of the things that I am excited about in bringing the technology OhmConnect has in California is the ability to put the power in the hands of consumers to actually respond to rational signals of load from the market. We'll give them the information, they can act on it, they'll have a fair price, but they'll have the ability to improve their price just by simply engaging in and helping to stabilize the grid going forward. It's, this is a truly, it takes a village type opportunity where it's going to take both sides, both the point of input and the point of load, to stabilize this market. And I think that really is the greatest learning that's going to come out of this event in February is that what we have doesn't work for the construct going forward. Those people, Becky said it quickly, but those are important numbers. And we're going to have renewable almost at parity with natural gas by the end of this year. Natural gas is still going to be in the lead, but not by much. We have like 8% coal now. So the two things that we're going to have to depend on is a load following capability of gas, but a pretty static generation source in the renewable side. And the behavior on the load side is going to have to change for us to have any form of stability.
Yeah. And keeping with that sort of consumer side, as you're sort of mentioning, putting some of these decisions in the hands of consumers is what retail electric providers can do. I want to go to you, Cameron, and ask sort of the same question, how do you think this is going to impact competition, but also how is it going to impact the products that you all are offering to consumers?
Yeah, no, that's kind of, the freeze was a very unfortunate event for a lot of people, but some of the things that I've been working on since we started Alamica Energy, and it sounds like OhmConnect is doing something similar, is this is the best proof point that we could have had. So in terms of the competitive space, I think it's pretty bad. I think as a competitive market, we lost a little bit of trust. We have a little bit of egg on our face, regardless of if we could have prevented this issue or not. And I do want to tip my hat to ERCOT, though. I think they've, the council there has done a absolute phenomenal job in terms of facilitating as many transactions as they could to prevent retailers that have failed going polar. It's my personal opinion that, reps going polar is the absolute worst thing that could happen, right? It's essentially a de facto sign that our grid failed, right? And as a market participant, I don't want that to happen. But to your question about products and how the consumers will participate going forward. I think that's what I'm most excited about. Sometimes with trying to change this market has been very difficult, or make improvements has been really difficult because power has been so cheap. That's kind of what everybody's gravitating towards. How cheap can we get it? But we're losing the with going through the cheapness, we're losing the innovation, I think. Gritty, it's unfortunate that they've gone out of business, but I think they've done some really, really great things in terms of being able to put the power of decision making in the hands of the consumer. Obviously, it didn't work out perfectly, but I think they did a lot of good things in terms of innovation. But going back to kind of what we're working on is we're first a renewable energy company. We just got our rep license to be able to serve power. But at the end of the day, our mission and goal is to put the generation side back on the consumer's hands. So by either installing rooftop solar and battery systems or serving green energy. So at the end of the day, demand response has been around for a very long time, but I think on the consumer side, the buy-in has been relatively low. We have tons of data either on the residential or consumer side, but it's been very difficult to get consumers to actually act on the data that we give them. I think, going back to Gritty, that's one of the big things that they were able to do. Gamification was huge there. But our mission is to, using data and building trust with the consumer, is really control it for them based on their needs and wants. So, for example, a customer with a solar or battery or both in their home, along with Nest thermostats and different dispatchable assets they may have in their home, they can now take advantage of either pricing events or load shedding events in the market and be a part of the generation side. I think, if we had that at scale in February, we obviously would have had failures across the board, but I don't think it would have been as bad. We wouldn't have had as many outages, clearly. So we're really excited about the opportunity to be able to build platforms where consumers can participate in load shedding, demand response, pricing events, things like that, and not actually have to change their behavior, because it's been really hard in Texas to do that.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, Becky, about this. What can policymakers do to encourage this sort of consumer participation and getting consumers more aware of how we can conserve energy or how we can participate in the energy transition, that sort of thing?
Sure. So let me too, if I may, just respond to with the retail electric providers and their future here in the market.
Yeah.
Because I think whether you're a current rep or whether you're going to be an incoming new rep in the market in the future, you have three headwinds in front of you. Number one is you're going to have to post, especially new ones, more collateral than you did before going forward. Number two, it's probably going to be a higher cost of capital for you, because lenders are going to look at this market with a bit more risk than they did before. And number three is that you have some, near monopoly reps right now. Two of them have over 60% of the market. So you're really going to have to be savvy of how you're going to be able to come into the market and, figure out what your beachhead is and capture some market share, which I think ultimately policymakers would welcome. We want to continue to have that vibrant information. So going to your question about how can policymakers really effectively communicate with the public, it made me think about, when I was heading up the Utility Commission was during the time, and that's when I got to know Don, is we were restructuring and executing on electric choice. And so we had, fortunately, a big pot of money that the legislature had funded for the Utility Commission to do just one thing, and that was to educate the public in and around all of ERCOT about electric choice and what that meant. And so we tried to do that in harmony with the retail providers that were coming into the market, so that people understood what was happening, what choice meant, how you execute on it. We had a website that we had tailored to that still exists, but it's probably not all that popular anymore. So I think if I were back in that saddle again today, I would be asking the elected officials for money in my budget to go out and campaign, do a communication campaign on what needs to happen, or during some kind of scarcity event again, make sure that you're really sensitive to forecasts and go out there ahead of time to be educating the public of what are some ways you can prepare for something like that, and what are your choices, and what happens if you're in a blackout, or how to remind them how to switch if they need to switch.